Bear, I mentioned this on a voicemail last night. I think, alchemy is always appropriate talk this day and age for anything, because it relates to all aspects of the true sciences, which are coming back to light. So, and the more that we bring up alchemy and the true sciences, the better. So, okay.
Yeah. And on our podcast, I really want to develop that a lot more.
And you guys stay away from the trigger words, I assume?
Yes, we actually just had an old on the I call it Loosh Tube. On Loosh Tube, we had an old one deleted, an old Alfacast with Tom Barnett and Mark Patelic, because it seems like the biggest trigger word is around the jibby jabby.
Of course.
That's the one. But I'm sure you've also seen it in terms of shape of realm.
Yeah, not so much, to be honest with you. I mean, if you just stick to that, usually that stuff will stay up. But yeah, if you go anywhere medical misinformation, they call it, or jibby jabby, of course, then
I was actually going to post some of these screenshots to my Instagram today, because I went ahead just for shits and giggles to go through their YouTube offers an indoctrination program where you go through this class to get your warning taken off. And they literally have you do a quiz. It's really quite phenomenal. I have to post these because it's just insane. So it's just so crazy. Like
of themselves.
Have you gone through that, Jaren, just for fun? Like
I don't know if they changed it, but I did go through it when they make you go through it, for sure.
Yeah, it's pretty evil, to say the least.
You have to make sure that you're going to act right.
Oh, of course. Daddy Google.
Yeah, there's a reason why they took off the "Don't do evil" off their slogan, because it just became too apparent that.
Right. I was surprised to see this list of all these natural companies that have sold out. You know, Burt's Bees and Tom's of Maine, all these companies that people think are natural and on our side, and they've all sold out.
Oh, like the apple cider vinegar one too, and Galita Bear.
Bragg's.
I was on that campus back in the day, totally sold out. Yeah, you can't do Bragg's anymore.
They all have, back in the 60s when the first health food stores were emerging, you go in and you get a Hansen juice or something, it's like cold pressed boysenberry juice, just really good, authentic stuff. That's what health food stores were about. And now they've sold out to, frickin' who knows who.
Yeah, because Coca-Cola comes through. I was a store manager of a drugstore, right? So we know, and how it works that, Coca-Cola comes through and they want to have all that product, because then they can make it so much cheaper than everyone else having to actually deliver. So if you have some mom and pop store that's going to deliver, like you said, your freshly squeezed boysenberry juice, it's just too expensive. You can't compete with, by the time they deliver it to the stores and how can it themselves and everything, the price is just going to be too high.
Okay, I'm going to hit record before we ladle much more gravy. Let's go ahead and hit record here. Okay, here we go.
They have improved everything though with lacing the drinks with baby parts and things like that. So
Pepsi, good old Pepsi.
Here we go. Boom, we're back for another episode of Alfacast. I'm Mike Winter, and I'm here as always with the debonair Dr. Bear, Paul Lando, coming to you.
You noticed my haircut I got yesterday, right?
I did. Was our friend in town, or did you actually go somewhere to get a haircut?
No, I went somewhere. I was in town anyway, so I took advantage, and I spent quite a long time in front of the mirror coiffing this morning. So I thank you for recognizing that.
Quite debonair today, and I've decided not to wear a hat for once as well. So we're clean today, even though the beards are in full effect. Gonna be a good one today. Frosty morning. We have skipped fall and gone right into winter. Hit the high 30s last night, and the lovely weather wars are upon us. As I get all these notifications from our community on all this interesting weather stuff going on. And it's just one of many things, and how those that shouldn't be are messing with us, but that's okay, because we're all about solutions here. And when we understand our divine right as creators, We influence our locality, our terrain, and also the realm in ways that go way beyond what the materialists say is reality. And we'll be going into all of that today, which is what we love here on Alfacast, because this is the empowering knowledge, gnosis, wisdom, and facts that what light us up literally from the eternal light, and which provide us with the needed solutions moving forward. I do want to say one thing quickly, Bear. Our partner for the new platform we're about to launch, HowTube, is just announced a crowdfund. HowTube is a platform that is essentially like a Vimeo that does not censor. And when I say Vimeo, is they are the only ones that I know of that provide an option to privately embed links, videos without allowing for them to be shared or viewed outside of a private firewall, which is important for all the private communities that have been developed. So we, for instance, use this for the end of COVID. We use this for Alex Zek, for Alfa Vedic, for Music and Sky. And they got crushed by the end of COVID with like 4 million views and couldn't afford to stay up. And so we've launched a crowdfund. This is going to be what we use for the Alfa Vedic platform. Currently, we're forced to be using LooshTube because we can't use Vimeo. Vimeo will censor us. And so we can't even use LooshTube, obviously, either. We're kind of out right now without an option. So we really need HowTube up and running. If you go to howtube.com/crowdfund, you can throw them $20 and help us get them back up online. For the end of COVID, you'll see that the videos aren't even up. We've had to use Rumble right now, which is gotten VC from God knows what, weffers, and are not what they say they are. And yes, decentralized tech is the future, but like Odyssey, which we're streaming on right now, they cannot do private embed videos because it's all public on a public blockchain. So yes, there is still the need for centralized good people out there like Mike from HowTube, who obviously by supporting the end of COVID has shown that he really means what he says in terms of supporting free speech and not censoring. And this is a great platform. So please go support them. That is my one ask for today. And then support us, alfavedic.com, and support our guests, Jeranism. We'll have the link to the site.
Let's be a little more aggressive about having our community push the like and, subscribe and all that, because we're just gotten clobbered from day one. I've watched our numbers go forward, backwards, you name it. So our subscribing list has definitely been tampered with big time. So take it away, Mike.
Shadow banned for sure. As our guest today, Jaren, will definitely understand. He's seen that. The shadow banning is one of their techniques to keep you on their system, sucking the loosh from you while making sure that you don't have the reach to actually have more of an impact. Versus just shutting you off, because they know if they completely shut us off their systems, then there'll be a cascading effect towards alternative platforms like Odyssey, like our partner Unite, by the way, which is another great platform, Say Your G's platform. There's all sorts of alternatives. So we navigate this in a way where we're still on LooshTube because there's so many of you on there. But yeah, please give us a thumbs up, support us. Watch us on Rumble, watch us on these other platforms. That's cool. Eventually, the plan is to be completely in the private, and having a partner like HowTube allows us to do that. Okay, today, Jaren joining us. Can everything we've been taught concerning science, historical events, and even the very nature of the Earth realm, in fact, be a laughable whopper? Growing numbers of free-spirited thinkers are not just suspect of the mainstream narrative, but now see clearly through the thin veneer of these systemic falsities. Quote, we'll know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American public believes is false. William Casey, he's the former director of the CIA, upon being asked what the goal of the agency was. Whether you're a proponent of classical logic, a researcher par excellence, or simply default to your spidey senses, it's all carries a familiar barnyard odor. The man behind the Jeranism Channel, Jeran Campanella, brings his keen intellect and knack for exposing what should be obvious today to this episode of Alfacast. Quote, I'm an open-minded, observant, libertarian idealist, conspiracy theorist who hates the Federal Reserve and big government. I'm a YouTube content creator, Rockfin creator, Rockfin being another one of those great platforms to go out and support, and a live streamer. I'm a crypto enthusiast, coach, and consultant, as well as a streaming and video editing consultant, a personal improvement and relationship counselor, debate moderator, and host of the True Earth Summits. I believe the news tells you lies on behalf of Big Pharma, the military-industrial complex, and the scientific technological elite. I believe in self-government, freedom, and privacy for all. I think we live in a world of lies, and as a father of 2 children, I see it as a duty to not leave them a world run by tyrants who are no different or better than you or I. I would say much less. I think the power of human consciousness has been suppressed through lies about who you are, why you're here, and where you live. Join me as I expose the deceptions and name the deceivers who care nothing for you or your family's well-being and have orchestrated a false history to steal from us our opportunity to bring heaven to earth. Jaren joins us today, a true Renaissance man, someone definitely in our circles we appreciate as we see the Sigma male here once again, which is how we move forward by taking it all on our shoulders as a community and bringing truth to light. Bear Lando, take it away, my friend.
Thank you. Great intro, Michael, as always. Jaren, welcome, and thanks so much for making time with us. And by the way, thank you for your invite to your solstice event. That was great fun talking to your community. And
Yeah, it was awesome.
you're doing great. Great. Yeah, you're doing great work out there. So that's awesome. You know, what I really like in your intro is that, you know, one of the things that makes you tick is that you want to leave the world in a better place for your prodigy. And, you know, that kind of warms my heart because that's where I come from. And also, it's interesting that, you know, you have great disdain for the Federal Reserve because, you know, way back in the day, decades ago, I was traveling in circles where we were trying to alert people to what the Federal Reserve is, and also who was behind it, what their objectives were, which is not to, you know, offer financial, you know, support for people. And also at the same time, because I was involved in medicine, I learned what was really behind the AMA and what makes that tick, which is the pharmaceutical industry. And, you know, there's a lot of metaphysicians of past years that stated the 2 whips keeping humanity in tow are medicine and finances, and so true as we you know, see today. Now, we took great efforts in the past to educate people on what was really going on with those institutions, and it was quite a stretch, and in fact so much that a lot of people just wouldn't buy it. And we felt it was important not just to understand how these institutions work so people could take measures to free themselves, but it was also a stepping stone into really revealing the greater fallacies out there, which is the nature of our realm. And if you can't wrap your mind around the fact that the global leaders are a bunch of deceptive, satanic, shriveled up old, you know, little dicks in suits, then you know, then you're really going to have a hard time getting into the greater truths of our realm. And that's where you come in today to enlighten us further on your research. And I know you've had quite a journey. So would it maybe be helpful to give folks just a little bit, a short history of how you got into this perhaps? And then also,
Sure.
then we can get into all sorts of discussions as we always do here. But
Sounds
thanks
good.
again for joining us.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks, guys. I love your work. And Mike, you've been awesome. End of COVID was awesome. Luckily, I got to see a lot of it early. And so hopefully that works out. And I thought that, what is it called? HowTube that was doing great. So looking forward to helping them out and getting them back running, because I think that's something we need for our summits as well. It's one of the things we struggle with. How do you control that information? There's not a lot of people out there that'll host it. So looking forward to see what they do with you guys. As far as how I got started in this, it was about 2014 that my wife and I were just starting to talk a little bit about resetting our belief systems into things that we could actually prove. We just, as we went through life and got married and talked about religion, we just kind of realized we were being lied to about everything. And so we said, let's start our belief system from the very beginning, from the very bottom, and kind of build it based off what we can actually prove. And one of the very first things she asked was, do you think the earth could be flat? And I said, no, that's ridiculous. Planes go around it. You went east and went to Germany. I went west and went to the Philippines. It simply doesn't work. So that was my kind of opinion. And again, it was a blocked opinion, right? It was your mind not allowing itself to kind of take in the whole picture, because of course I said, hey, how could it be flat? Planes go around it, right? And so it was about a couple of weeks after that I had seen for the first time the azimuthal equidistant map, or the AE map as they call it. And getting to see that planes could go around it just was kind of earth shattering to me. And then I said, oh, well, this is easy to debunk, because people going north-south, or at least south, circumnavigation south, would disprove this. This map doesn't, seem to make a lot of sense. So I went looking for that and couldn't find anybody except for the Sir Ranulph Fiennes, who's the cousin of the Queen, and he's the third baronet and Prince Charles's best friend. Sure, he's been on the Lolita Express. So, once I see all this, I'm like, and that's the only guy that claims to have, crossed going south. And even he stood in court and admitted to fraud, admitted to faking accidents and faking parts of his expeditions because somebody got hurt on one of his trips, but he's actually had to admit that in court. So these, right away, I said, we got a problem. I then saw a guy in 2015 by the name of ZQ Pilot. He was supposed to fly and break the record for the longest or the shortest circumnavigation in a single plane by somebody. And he flew from like South Carolina down to Argentina, and then from there to Brazil. And he was supposed to go across the South Pole and come up over at New Zealand. And he had these things on his plane called spider tracks, where you supposedly could track wherever they were. So I was kind of tracking this website. Well, sure enough, he flew from Brazil to the 90-degree marker south, and then went back to Brazil. And everybody said, what are you doing? And he said, oh, the weather got really bad at 90 degrees. So then he flew from Brazil out to like Easter Island, around that way to New Zealand, then went up to the North Pole and Alaska and came back, and they gave him the record. Now, when I saw them give him the record, I said, hold on a second. Now we're actually giving people circumnavigation records who didn't circumnavigate. And to me, that was kind of the big clue. And I just really started digging in deeper and deeper. And, the more you dig into the history of everything that we're taught about the sky, you just realize it's a fabrication. And, a lot of people have been sold on certain ideas that we know the size of Jupiter, or we know this, the mass of it or the gravity of it. And none of that stuff is known. And how would it be known anyway? You can just ask the question of how would they know that? How would they know we know the mass because we can do the math of but you could adjust anything, right? You can make the gravity stronger, the mass greater. You can do all these different numbers. And sure, you can make it all jive in a mathematical system, but it doesn't mean it's reality. So once I realized that, and I started challenging them on distances to stars, you name it, I just realized they don't have an answer. It's been 8 years. I really thought somebody from science was going to step up and kind of clear the air, but they have not. They've just hidden. They make excuses like, oh, we don't want to give flat Earth a platform. But then again, it's not really giving somebody a platform if you debunk it, right? I mean, if they went live on a Friday night and had Neil deGrasse do a 2-hour special where he debunked flat Earth, that's not really giving it, oh, we don't want to give it credence. Well, no, if you're debunking something, you're actually destroying it. But they know that they can't, and that they are basically, lying to people about where they live. And so, yeah, that's what I've been trying to expose for the longest time. And then finding some things along the way, finding health things, getting healthier myself, growing food from home, electroculture like you guys deal with. So it's all been this great big process that has amounted to a happy family for myself and I. And we got a 3-year-old son. We're having a good time. And that's about it. So we hope that we can get people to wake up to this truth. I did think it was going to be a little bit easier in the beginning. I did think, I would watch the ISS or something and I'd say, oh my God, I just need to show everybody this footage and they'll all realize it's fake and that we'll all be able to call it out. But then instead I showed people and they believed it was real. And, if you've ever looked at like pictures of Saturn, supposedly from these crafts out there, you would laugh. It's clearly fake footage, and just people they believe so much in the lie I think you can go to that Sagan quote where he talks about, if you love the lie for long enough, it's hard to be, you love the bamboozle too much, and that's where they're at now. Now, he said the quote talking about religion, but really it comes back the same way on science, that people now love this lie, the evolution lie, the no God lie, the Big Bang lie, the expanding universe lie. They love that too much. And once you love something like that too much, you're going to do whatever you can to make sure it's still true, especially if you've given up a belief in God, right? This is what a lot of these people are, science pusher, former religious people who got frustrated with the church and just went and found whatever, had their arms open saying, hey, we believe in nothing but fact here. And I know that because it happened to me for 6 months, where I got so fed up with the religion end of it, I did kind of say, oh, there is no God. So, atheism is correct. And let's go over here and let's learn about evolution and let's learn about the age of the earth. And when I did, I realized it was just as big of a religion over there, that nobody knew what they were talking about. You've got people like Richard Dawkins, who, if you ever heard him explain evolution, it's hilarious. The guy who's supposed to know the most about it just describes it in many years, and then the worm grew legs, and the fish grew legs and came out of the water. It's like, this is just a fairy tale that you're telling people. And because people want it to be true so bad, they just accept it as true. And you can't even teach something different in science if you wanted to. It's part of the curriculum. Evolution is true, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So anyway, all these things started to come out to me: age of the earth, dinosaurs, and I just realized that everything we've been told is a lie, and it's better to build your belief system back with what you can prove. And if some things you can't prove, oh well, maybe there's signs of creation. Maybe, for just one quick example, I'll turn it back to you. If we look at where we exist in reality, whatever you want to call that, in some existence. But I don't think we're supposed to be thinking about what's above it, what's below it, what's on the side of it, because it is all that there is. This is all that there is, this existence. And what the materialists did is they came over and they started talking about, oh, well, the sun and moon are this, they're made of this, they do this. And then they said, this is the earth, it's a ball, and what's above it and what's below it, and these planets that are over here. So now we think of the earth in a very materialistic way, as in like it's a ball in space that has above it and below it and to the sides of it. When really, I don't think any of that's true at all. I think that it's completely a magical existence. There is nothing below it because it's all that there is. It's not even a question that should be asked. And I don't think it would be asked if it wasn't for people who have indoctrinated us to think in a very materialistic way, that the earth itself shouldn't be thought of in that way, in my opinion, because I think it exists pretty much in the mind of God. Without God, it couldn't exist. Therefore, it's probably that magical of an existence, but they've made it seem like, oh, we've got things 27 trillion miles that way that we can see just with a telescope. No, I don't believe that anymore. Until somebody proves it, they have every right to prove it to me, but they haven't been able to yet.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a challenging path that you've taken, but I think you'd probably agree that it really makes life exciting again. It really makes us understand that we're on a true life adventure, way better than any movie you could possibly watch. And I learned long ago that just data dumping people with facts is the worst thing, because they don't want to hear them. They've got, their emotional body is, what's making them tick. Right. So, it really is incumbent upon people to assume a great deal of responsibility to know the truth, because when you know the mechanisms of our realm, you also understand that we're a microcosm of that. We have everything to say about what goes on in our world and our collective by way of every single thought that we think. They're all electrical events. And you talk about the idea of, God, there's only one substance. And we get into that quite a bit on this show. Right. And Walter Russell does a great job of delineating how that works, all the way down through the realm, through the constellations that are projecting resonance to us and so forth. So, that's what I spoke a little bit about in at your event there. So I think what it boils down to is every individual now needs to make a decision whether they're ready to step up and assume responsibility for every single thing they do, think, and say. And I don't think a lot of people are ready for that, but we've been told for a long time that this time would come where we have to make the decision. And then I think we're all getting pushed off the fence one way or the other here.
No, it's true. So true. And you're right. I mean, for the first, 6-7 years, I really did feel like I had the duty to convince people. And then it switched as I started to realize, no, it's not my job to convince anybody of anything. It's my job to plant the seeds or possibly put truth out there so that somebody truly looking can find it, right? And when I changed to that, it just made everything a lot better for me. I don't get as frustrated or upset if I can't convince somebody, or I'm trying to spend all night building some case for that one person, which just doesn't make any sense when the case is simple. If you just look at it, to know that we've been lied to. The people that make me the craziest are the people in the truth community, if you will, who all admit that we're being lied to about everything. But when it comes to flat earth, they throw their towel in. They say, no, you can't, not that, which is just the opposite of what it should be. If they lie to you about every single thing that you can touch and you can go and verify and you can go and experiment on, and they lie about those things, then they certainly lie to you about what's in the sky 25 trillion miles away, but people have it backwards. And they're like, no, about that, they're telling us the truth. It's like, no, they're never going to tell you the truth, let alone when it's an open slate. Space is an open slate for them. They can really tell whatever story they want. And this is why you hear things like, it's raining diamonds on this planet. And it's, it's all just Narnia. They're able to make up whatever they want about it. It exists in the vacuum of space, right? Where the planet just flies and never has anything happen to it. It doesn't have the atmosphere ripped off. It's just coasting right now at 1.2 million miles per hour through a vacuum because some guys tell us that. And the amount of people who will come at you and tell you that they hate you and that they will call you an imbecile, and they'll hope you don't procreate, and they'll hope that you get put in a gas chamber over something that was simply told to them. This is not like these people were out being astronauts and seeing the globe Earth and they're like, come back. And then I'm questioning them and they're like, you idiot, I'm going to kill you. I saw it myself. These are people who were simply just told by some people that the Earth's a ball. And they're like, oh, okay, the Earth's a ball. And then when I come and say something different, they're like, I hate you. I want to, which just makes no sense to me. It's, pretty embarrassing. And it's like you said, I used to think people were further along than they are. And I feel like I'm kind of being held back by the positions of some that have archaic beliefs or connections that they still think are legit, or they just don't see things like I do, like that seems simple, and yet there's still this struggle for some people to get over the little humps of, if I say we are all God, immediately, sorry, my son's trying to come in. Okay, so immediately we have like some sort of situation where everybody's either on the same team or they're against each other. And I would prefer that we all are on the same team for sure.
And, when you get into true science, I'm a recovering scientism student, because I had to go
Right.
through all sorts of crap, for my vocation. But, early on in my schooling, it's just things didn't add up for me because, you just study the laws of thermodynamics and different ones contradict each other. And it became very apparent, and I'm no genius, but it just was obvious that there's a lot of after the fact jury rigging all the time, just coming up with absolute nonsense in order to justify the last theory or make up a new one. Now, if you go back to the old text, the alchemist and the folks that were practicing true science, just observing, doing things and observing the results and learning
Right.
through empiricism. They left a great map behind as far as, how things really work. And then a lot of more contemporaneous folks like Russell, explain more the mechanisms from a Western, mindset. So when you understand those things, how things really work, then you realize that we don't have to have a lot of complicated theories.
Right.
There's only one substance, one mechanism, and you can prove it out in a chemistry lab. You can prove it out in medicine. You can prove it out in agriculture. So, it's got a real groundedness to it. And so here we are. And again, some folks are just going to take the dark side of the force and go down that road. And, I'm at peace with that too. Now, it is kind of annoying because of so many folks in that camp. It's forcing the rest of us to have to endure this stuff, a while longer. But at the same time, maybe there's opportunities in that too.
Right. Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both, really. But yeah, like I keep, bringing up Walter Russell and Victor Schauberger and some of those, greats who, Charles Fort, just people that have been instrumental in what I now think, a lot of it came from David Avocado Wolf is great, who led me down the road to some great writers. And once you see that there's an alternative position, I think that's what I think everyone should deserve to know is that when I was a store manager of a drugstore for 15 years, and I didn't have time to know the world. So I basically worked from, about 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. every day. I'd get off work, I'd go home, put my son, get some food together, maybe watch a baseball game and fall asleep. And then that was just back to, so your entire belief system comes from the 30 minutes of news that I would listen to on the way to work every day, right? That's where you get your belief system. And so when anybody would come into the store and ask anything about what's going on in pop culture or life, that's where I would get, and you just find yourself repeating exactly what. So I think that's what they've done a brilliant job of, is keeping people busy. And that's why I wonder if they knew this would happen with COVID, because what COVID did is it brought a lot of people out of work and then to home. And what those people did is they spent time researching for the first time. And that's kind of the story we all have, right? That a lot of us couldn't research or didn't research when we had too much going on. The second that we had that free time and we started looking into it, everything just opens up to you. The answers are there, unless you listen to the mainstream media and believe everything that Anderson Cooper tells you, in which case, you're going to have your belief system entirely built by the TV, by the TV programming. So I think that for me, realizing that has helped me a little bit in talking to new people, just making sure that you don't go too hard at them. I mean, if somebody would have came at me in my store and said, the earth's flat and you need to wake up and stop being such a sheep, I probably wouldn't have taken too well to it. I probably would have told them, what difference does it make in my life? I still got to go to work tomorrow. And so I just try and remember that when I approach people that, everybody's maybe not at the same place I was at that time, or maybe he's not ready for it. But also I know that you got to plant those seeds, because I had a buddy who came into my store and told me, 9/11 was an inside job. And I said, what are you talking about? And I said, don't ever talk to me about that again. I don't want to hear that. I don't even know what you're talking about. So kind of dismissed him. This is probably 2005. And it was months and months later that I was home. It was one day where I'm day off work and you're sitting in front of the computer where you just go, what was he talking about? So that little seed that he planted, that even though I dismissed him and told him don't ever talk to me again, still planted enough of a seed that I checked that on the internet. And before you know it, that was probably my first thing that I woke up to was 9/11. And then from there, once you realize that you can be wrong about things, or you can immediately react to somebody who tells you something new, and you immediately react with that kind of fight mechanism, then you realize that that's just human nature. That everybody has that no matter what it is, if you try and challenge somebody's belief, the first thing will never be, oh, you're right, I was wrong all this time. And so I think I was expecting that at some point, or like in a debate, that somehow this guy would be like, oh, you're right, the earth is flat. Once I got over the fact that that's never going to happen, and the debates are actually for the audience, and that you have to be a little more tactical and kind of just show people, let those people hang themselves, and show people that the truth is out there. But you have to be okay with saying you don't know sometimes. And that's another thing that they didn't tell us that in school. They never said, when somebody asks you what's the distance to the sun, or why, to say I don't know is okay, which it is okay. If you don't know, it's okay to say I don't know. Maybe they're signs of creation. Maybe they're not meant for us to know. But too many people are stuck in this. We have to know everything when they actually don't know anything, right? They're just like parrots. A parrot can repeat what they're told. We don't consider a parrot very smart, but yet in school, the person who repeats the best gets pushed up to the professor, or even some other job. So that's really us promoting the opposite of intelligence. We're actually promoting brain dead repetition. And so the world is the way it is, in my opinion, because of exactly how we've built it. This is what they wanted, and they got what they wanted, sadly.
When I was in high school, I was in a chemistry class, and the priest, who was Father Mitchell, who was teaching it, he was trying to get the concept of a mole across. Of course, they're just repeating, mole, which is a unit of measurement in chemistry for people that don't know. He was explaining that just in, very mechanical, linear terms. And my brain was going a mile a minute, and I'm like, okay, what does this actually mean? And then he just turned to me and in a very triggered voice just said, a mole is a mole is a mole is a mole. Got it? And, further in my later education, I had the same encounter many times. They just get really triggered when you ask questions.
Right.
I like your term that you use for the Earth shape, which is true Earth.
Mhm.
That's kind of where I come from. I don't know what shape the Earth is. I always tell people I'm more concerned about how it functions, because if you understand the functionality of it, the mechanisms at work, then you can apply those, and and it has a very practical application. And I always mention Walter Russell and Rudolf Steiner, but it would surprise people that they actually adhere to the spinning ball model. And that upsets a lot of people because they're starting to investigate other things, but then they realize there's a lot of truths, that those gentlemen gave to the world, which I'm a big fan of both of those guys. But we have to understand that they aren't gods either. And even though there were luminaries of sorts, it doesn't mean that they had everything right. But I have no problem reconciling that we are a stationary plane, because if I take their basic mechanisms that they teach, you can make either model fit. Now, they just happen to do it more from an astrological and talking about planets, and then just easily flowed into the whole, we're revolving around the sun rather than vice versa. So that sort of thing doesn't really challenge me either, because again, if you know the mechanisms, you can actually prove out everything they're saying, but then adapt it to a model of a stationary plane. So I just want to throw that out, because we'll get some comments every so often that, oh, even Steiner said it was a spinning ball, So
Right. Which I
those
guess
folks,
for me, it
yeah,
would be tough for me to expect them to see through it, because what we've really used for us to see through it is long distance photography, things that they really wouldn't have had to actually see. I mean, yeah, they've done a couple tests in the Bedford level experiment, but when we're seeing the distances that we're seeing and seeing horizons behind, 17-mile platforms, when you're 6 feet tall, the horizon should be no more than 3 miles away. Things like that have kind of led us down the road. And yeah, is it, do we know the exact shape of it? No, but it is funny to me that they made a concerted effort to push this idea that flat Earth was the dumbest belief that there ever could be. And in my experience, it's always been, whenever they've kind of pushed this one direction where they really push hard and tell you, this is it, this, climate change, it has to be climate change, and this is why it's human. Well, then I tend to think the opposite is true. And in the case of the flat Earth, I think it's awfully peculiar that none of us remember a day in 6th grade or something where they said, this half the class take curved and this half take flat, and let's do some experiments and let's figure it out. They glossed right over it. They described it as an ancient belief. And anybody who starts looking into this starts to see that there is a lot of interesting points here. There's a lot of things that lead more towards the flat Earth than there is globe Earth. And otherwise, you have to believe in, the magic of 400 times distant sun and a 400 times as big sun, where that's just a cosmic coincidence causing eclipses. It's pretty insane to think just happened, randomly, and we just happen to live in this one period of time where that's taking place. And so for me, I think that that's really the reason I would say I'm a flat earther. If I had to go back and do it all over again, I might maybe stay with the word like globe skeptic for a little bit longer. I think you don't want to, the flat earth name has so much hate against it that's why we went with true earth, talking about the event, because that gives, if I'm telling somebody, they're like, what are you doing this weekend? I say, oh, I'm speaking at a true earth event. They'd be like, oh, very cool. But if I say I'm speaking at a flat earth event, they'll attack me and, rain blows on me. So you have to kind of choose your battles. And that's just not a battle, I think, necessarily worth it battling, that people hate that word. They are told that it's the dumbest belief of all time. It's how politicians refer to each other, right? Oh, you're just being some flat earther. Oh, it's the something that they've attached to the dumbest belief ever. And it's really not one of the dumbest beliefs ever. It's actually makes more sense when it comes to seasons. It makes more sense when it comes to the differences between the North and South. The fact that we can't find curvature, the fact that they lied to us about how East and West are different than North and South. There's so many different things that once you understand them, you see the deception at hand. One of the things that we found recently is it looks like in the South right now, as the sun is getting faster and faster towards its outer, its biggest circumference, that we're noticing that everybody on Earth is experiencing a reduced twilight time. And now you think, well, why isn't that being shown in the time and date or whatever? Like, well, if you go there and look at time and date, they name twilight by the degrees below the horizon. So when the sun is 6 degrees below, 12 degrees below, and 18 degrees below. But that just makes it mathematical and completely removes the reality of it. And the reality is that everyone on Earth is going right now through a reduction in twilight time as we approach December 31st or December 21st. When we get there, everybody on Earth will start marching back the other way, and we'll all experience a increased amount of twilight time. And that's because the sun will be slowing down. And as it slows down, then when it sets, there's a longer period of time before you actually lose that light, that twilight time. So that's right there a debunk of the globe model. The globe model calls for the opposite to be true. Right now, if we're reducing our amount of time after the sun sets in the north, the south should be increasing as they're getting closer to summer. And that's what everybody has thought, but we're actually realizing that's not the case. We have people down there testing for us, showing us that they're actually right now reducing their sunlight time as they go towards December 21st. So there's these little things that we think are going to be huge that the globe is going to have a hard time explaining because they never really told people. Just recently I saw another thing that was looking at two different places in the north, one in the north and one in the south, say Sydney and LA. They're both about 33 degrees. And that the sun sets the exact same degree for both of them right now. So let's say today the sun is setting at 2:55. Well, both of them are identical. And that's another thing that they just didn't tell anybody, because what they want you to believe is that it's this varying thing from the north to the south, which kind of makes the equinox not as impressive anymore, right? The equinox, they're always like, oh, everybody on Earth experiences the sunset at 270 and rise at 90. But it's like, yeah, but every other day, people in the north and south have the same angle anyway. The angles never change. It just changes kind of in unison because we all are experiencing, what's crazy is that we're all experiencing a very personal sun, which is, coded in Christianity with the personal relationship with the sun. We each have our own relationship with the sun, which is why, you would have a sun. If you were standing at the beach, the reflection would come to your feet. And let's say there's 100 more people down the beach, each 100 feet apart. Each person would not see that reflection coming to your feet, but would only see the one coming to theirs because each person has that personal relationship. So just some incredible stuff. That's the only reason I would say I'm a flat earther, is because I can't imagine it being anything else. They have fabricated a sphere. I think the reason for that is because, what did people do in the past whenever tyranny was at the door? They would leave. That's how the United States supposedly started, was that people in Britain got fed up and they said, we're out of here. And they left the United States and they came over here to start something new. Well, if you were the elite and the powerful, you would want to end the idea of people having somewhere to go. So by drawing a circle, making a globe, all of a sudden now you tell everybody, oh, if you go any direction, you just come back to where you started. And you've essentially trapped human beings here. And as long as you bring them up through school, and we know that, school was done by the Rockefellers, that they're the ones who made the school books. And so it's very easy for them to put in this lie and for it to be carried on for so long. And if you teach flat earth to be the dumbest thing that there ever was, well, then you've got professors and everybody else that are going to continue teaching the globe doctrine. And how do you get it across to everybody? I think it just takes time. People need to hear the truths of, we don't straw man the globe model, right? Like they straw man flat earth and they put us in space, a little disc in space, or they put a disc in front of the moon at the eclipse and say, well, we don't ever see this. We actually make fun of the real globe model, which are things like we can see back in time, which is like magical stuff. These guys just made tubes of glass and all of a sudden could see back in time, and everybody believed them. And they could see what's inside of an atom, even though an atom's the smallest thing that there is and can't be divided. Well, these guys started telling us, oh, we know it's in an atom. It's a nucleus and a proton and an electron, and they orbit around each other like little solar systems. But again, these are just pretend. These are just models. They may be useful, but they're not as I thought they once were. I thought we could see inside of an atom. And then you realize that they really can't, nor can they really see an atom. So once you kind of are onto some of these hoaxes,
they don't exist.
Right, exactly. So there you go. So I feel exactly like you. Right. I mean, it wasn't until I started questioning these things and challenging them. Show me where that is. Show me where this is. Show me how we came up with the distance to the sun. Oh, well, we did, and then the story includes that we had to guess that Venus was the same size of Earth. I mean, can you imagine looking up in the sky at some point and just saying, Venus is definitely the same size as Earth? What are you talking about? It's just a star in the sky. And they just assume that. And then from there, they got all their distances by using the astronomical unit and, transits. But they never got it any other way. And then everything just always works out for them, right? Then they figure it out. I don't know if you've heard the story about when they found like Neptune. It's like, oh, the mathematical, miracle of all time was that these guys were like looking at the sky and being like, something belongs here. The math is telling us it's just so stupid. It never happened. It's so pretend. But people buy into these stories, or they think that, Aristophanes was measuring these shadows back in 275 BC. And again, you say, well, where's the paper? Oh, we don't have any of his books. None at all. You've got people who were the Library of Alexandria after him that never mentioned him in any book. I mean, so we're just being fabricated our history. A lot of these things have been added after the fact. The idea of the year zero is a joke to me. I don't think that at any point they ever went back and said, let's put a zero here. And even before that is, it's just ludicrous. It's like it's all a setup, which I think is included in the fact that there's no dates in the Bible. I think that that's something they can use numerous times, kind of bringing out the same storyline. And I think that that's what happens. I think that we're here and we kind of go through some resets. And I think maybe some people figured out when those are, and they try and survive them. And then they just keep fooling the people that are left after that. So my goal is just to get out some of this information and get people thinking and questioning. And what you said, you went to a school. I heard you, Catholic school, high school. Is that what you were talking about?
Yeah, I endured 12 years of parochial school before I went to college.
And so what high school was that? I went to Bellarmine. I don't know if you've heard of that, but
Oh, Bellarmine. Yeah, I played with a couple guys from Bellarmine in college, football players. I went to Marin Catholic in Marin County.
okay, yeah. So same area, same old stomping grounds. Yeah, but that one always baffled me because they would teach me science on one end, but then the next class would be religious studies, and it kind of left me in this kind of weird position that I grew up believing things like evolution were not necessarily true. I grew up Catholic, which is kind of wishy-washy about that anyway. They kind of do lean sometimes towards science, sometimes they don't. But
let's not forget the Big Bang was generated by the whole theory was by a Jesuit.
Yes, George Lemaitre. Yeah. So once I I got to a certain age, be that sophomore, junior, and I just kind of gave up on school, really became disillusioned with it. And now looking back, I think I realized what's going on. And that's simply that those guys want you, and it was a Jesuit, my school was a Jesuit high school, that they want you in a belief system, and they don't care what the belief system is. They don't care whether you believe in science or whether you believe in religion, full-fledged. Either one, I think they know they have you, they know exactly how you respond to things. They have you, they basically make the decisions for you, right? They know how you're going to vote. They know how you're going to act in certain situations. So for me, I think that the best position to take sometimes is the middle. I'm not a big fan of people who take firm stances, unless I've seen them sometime before change their opinion. Most of these people will take such a firm stance in some direction. I'm like, well, that person's never going to get off that now. So they're either going to always believe that. And I try to not do that. So I try to stay more in the middle, leave it open for questioning, leave it open for my mind to change, because I know what I believe now is much different than a year ago. So, to ever think that, right now, everything I believe is perfect and is kind of dumb. So I just leave it a little bit more open and explore these ideas and thoughts and some experiments and things that we can do with people to try and get them to also share it. Because I think that's another thing, right? If everybody shared it with two people, that kind of exponential growth, where I think a lot of the people who watch us are kind of a little bit afraid to share it, to be honest with you. And I think that kind of holds us back a little bit, that they're very comfortable maybe in our circles or in our chat groups, but are they really out speaking out in the real world? I'm not sure so much yet, but maybe that time is coming.
Well, go ahead, Mike.
I was just going to say, as we saw during COVID, the biggest fear in most is social denunciation by their peers. They've done a phenomenal job of creating that from youth through the schooling system, and the trauma that comes with that, from trying to step out of authority, getting as Bear's generation would literally get their wrists slapped by a stick, to, to now the social media platforms where if you step out of order, you are demeaned and you are, thrown hate speech at you and all that. So yeah, it's also though been really cool to see the renegades coming together in communities like this and expressing this. And I will just say, for those, the chat's on fire right now, and I thank you. It's very civil, which is always great to see in our community, because we are here to explore all these ideas, a childlike wonder in many ways, right? And in doing that, I believe we can use the true scientific process, right, of using observation correctly in conjunction with logic to make intuitive sort of conclusions, but in a way that's open-minded, but also using discernment, and then just having fun with it, and not being so closed off and so tied to your ego where you have to attack others when you get triggered, and embracing your triggers and understanding your triggers are openings to other knowledge and wisdom. And hopefully with our channel, because we open to all these different types of people that bring in nuggets of truth, we always try to explain or try to express this idea of embracing your trigger, being open to other ideas, because even if they say some things that trigger you that you don't believe is true, there are nuggets of truth. Nobody has it all right. So let's be open explorers of this in this realm, and I think we're on the right path towards that. And I take pride in our community for definitely being pioneers in that.
Absolutely. I don't believe anything that I say. You should never be doing that. You should be following up all this stuff on your own. And I know people don't like that either, be given homework assignments, but really you only feel comfortable in your beliefs when you've reached them on your own. It's really never a good feeling if you've accepted the beliefs of somebody else. That's why some of these science believers are so anal retentive, is because they are not actual believers. They are more believers in science. And so when you ask them about transgenders or whatever, they have to give the science answer, and that sometimes makes them very uneasy. But I'm also
and I think an important distinction is that's literally a cult of scientism. It is the religion of the day. Mm-hmm. Most of what the cult says does not actually stand up to the true scientific method.
Right.
And so what we're dealing with is superstition. We're dealing with actual magic. We're dealing with what they try to then project upon those who use the true sciences to understand the realm.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm open to being wrong about anything. So I'm always, if anybody, I do a show on Thursday nights, like tonight. It's a call-in show where people can come on and say whatever they want. So I'm always open to being shown that I am wrong, but just, most of them come, globe believers at least, and they give things that are not evidence to me. As far as what gravity is, for example, I can easily explain gravity with just the fact that denser things, are in the medium that they're in. So you've got us, we are denser than the air that we're in. And so we weigh down. And this is what gravity used to be, was weight. That's what gravitas is weight. And they've just flipped it on its head and said, oh no, we got to have this, this force that's pulling you. And it's like, I don't feel any force pulling me into the ground. I feel things have their own density, and this is what is weighing it, and it clearly wants to go in that direction, but there's no force pulling things down. So again, but these guys will come and they think that just saying, oh, we proved gravity with Cavendish in a shed, that's their evidence. And I'm like, no, that's not sufficient for me. When you go and look at that actual experiment, it's ridiculous. And things like electrostatics were not eliminated, and it would easily explain it. So again, there's just a lack of them understanding the questions. You'll hear people say, oh, the southern plane flights prove globe Earth, when it's completely wrong. Southern plane flights prove that the globe is a lie. You've got planes down there that are doing 7,000 miles in 14 hours, but they also have a 200 mile per hour headwind, or, basically jet stream. So it means that we have to then believe that planes are actually going 300 miles per hour in the south, being helped with 200 mile per hour winds, and going a total of 500 mile per hour across these journeys, when really the truth is that the planes are going much, much faster, that the planes are being helped with that 200 mile per hour additional, and they're going, 10,000 miles, but they've told everybody it's only 7,000. So there's so many lies out there and so many things to uncover that really, like you said, Bear, it really does give you this new childlike wonder that no question has been solved. I mean, somebody asked me the other day, so what do you think about tectonic plates? Are those pretty much guaranteed? I'm like, no, that's something that they yell and scream all the time. That is one, you cannot question tectonic plates. As soon as they say that, I'm questioning tectonic plates. As soon as they say these things, that there's a problem there.
Well, what we have to consider too is that the realm is a two-way street. It's an interaction between consciousness. I think we can all find examples in our own life where we have certain belief systems that work for us. certain things we do that work, and then we learn new things. And now, our consciousness shifts into that new reality, and things work differently. I can think of just in my own medical practice, things I did years and years ago that worked fine, things that I believe. But since then, I've learned additional things that supersede that, or maybe even refute what I used to believe to be true. And it works. But, it worked back then, but now relative to where I'm at, I need different things to work in my life, to work in the things I do. We're constantly projecting and also receiving at the same time. One good thing that Steiner, understood is that our sensory apparatus is a dipole. It's sending and receiving. And we have been more trained to be receptive rather than actually actively projecting. So we are very vulnerable to a lot of the stuff that is coming at us because we have forgotten how to be conscious creators. One thing that they do have right in the scientism community is the science of ridicule. In classical logic, of course, you're taught the most fundamental classical fallacy is an ad hominem attack. So if you ever find yourself in a debate and you end up maligning your your adversary, right there you should know within yourself that you're full of shit, because if you can't do anything other than ridicule who you're debating against, you haven't got anything else. So the problem is again, people just want to be receptive. They want to be believers. They don't want to be the responsibility or have the responsibility for being co-creators. Now, going back into flat Earth, the gravity is an interesting thing too. It's just a quick comment on that. We're dealing with pressure zones. In reality, there's no such thing as anything having weight. It's another one of those false belief systems. However, objects based on their mass are going to be seeking pressure zones. And whenever something has a weight, it means it is out of balance within the pressure zone that it is seeking. That's why larger objects usually attract smaller objects. That's a whole thing we could get into the weeds with, but it would very elegantly help one understand, that gravity is also not some phenomena that lives independently in nature or has any reality behind it.
Well, and of course, with that, there is the ether, right? Which is the cosmic fabric that is where that interplay is happening on, which of course the cult denies its reality. I posted my theory of gravity, which is the end effect of the elementals attracted to each other via the light of intelligence. And basically, why not? I get to come up with my own theory because the theories that they propose are nonsense. But it's like
metaphysical sense. In a metaphysical sense, that could work. But you can even, when you get into pressure zones and things like that and seeking equilibrium, you can explain it very calmly to a Western, more of a linear mind. It would make perfect sense, more than what we had to learn in school. When I was, flying airplanes, which I did for a while, we used to practice by doing no instrument flying. We'd cover up the instrument panel and then just look at the horizon out the window. And so I spent a lot of hours actually looking at the horizon from way, way up in the air. And boy, I never, ever discerned one bit of curvature. And at that altitude, I should have been easily, any curvature should have been easily apparent. So with that, Mike, sorry, I kind of talked over you there. If you have something else to say, then I was going to ask Jaren a question just to kind of get more into the flat Earth basics.
Just on gravity, how and this goes to what we're going to cover more on the flat Earth basics, but anytime we, or anybody who is taking this position to deny curvature in the globe model, especially the flying space ball model, and all the contradictions, they just use gravity. It's the glue that ties all their lies together. I want to create a meme of like a scientism Karen just yelling gravity anytime you come up with with something that contradicts itself from the current globe space model, because that's what they use. That's just their red herring, or that's just their excuse they always throw out. And on the curvature thing, Jaren, you'll appreciate this. I was in the Oakland airport 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, coming from an event, and I had a pilot tap me on the shoulder, recognize me from the show, and basically I was actually reading Steiner, ironically, too. And he saw me reading a Steiner book, and I had an Alfa Vedic hat on. And he's like, "Are you Mike Winter?" And so we're chatting. He was a pilot for Southwest, commercial airline pilot, had flew in the Air Force. And I said, "So, flat or round?" And he said, "Definitely flat. There's a whole trend now flat, because our instrumentation doesn't, factor in curvature." And he went through this whole deal, right? We're not flying off the globe by going Mach 3 in the Air Force and blah, blah, blah. But, of course, the Karen's going to yell gravity. But that being said, he said that there is like an insider group of pilots now that are talking about it. But if you get too vocal and start really, bringing this up, you will lose your job, essentially.
Yep.
So I asked him, actually, would you be willing to go anonymously on with this group of pilots on Crow 777? Because I thought that would be a good platform for him to do it. And we are friends on Telegram. But I thought that was a pretty cool exchange I had.
Very cool. Yeah, we've seen that quite a bit. And you're right. We even had a girl that was a KWS pilot or something. And she came on Globebusters, a show I do on Sundays, and kind of gave us a little presentation saying that the Earth was flat. And the next day she got grounded for mental health. So, I mean, yeah, it does definitely, it's not going to be something that you're going to get away with talking about, but it's just like, and going back to what you said about gravity, that's so great, is it's very easy to see too, because you've got these guys, whether it's, any of these old scientists that have come out and said, Richard Feynman is the one who talked about once the observation doesn't match the theory, you get rid of the theory. And when it comes to gravity, because they have to hold on to it, like you said, well, that's where things like dark matter, dark energy, all these make-believe things have been added, is because gravity doesn't perform as they expect when they look out at the galaxies. And so they had to invent matter, and now 96% of the universe has never been observed, according to them. But this is what happens when you have something that you need to hold on to. They need to hold on to the gravity making the Earth a sphere. And so even if it doesn't match in outside observations, or even if we'd be able to get rid of things like expanding universe and dark matter and dark energy without it, they can't face that gravity might be wrong. Especially think of how they've taught everybody about it. I mean, people think it's actually proof of gravity to hold something up in the air and drop it and laugh in your face and say, "How dare you say gravity doesn't exist?" Not that that has anything to do with pulling to the center of anything. And Bear, I'm wondering if you ever thought about this. Like, it seems so simple to me now, is if we know what would happen if we got a huge balloon of gas, if we got a big helium balloon and we started to let it go up, right? We know that as it gets closer and closer to the vacuum, it's going to be dying to get out. There's no pressure anymore, so the gas wants to get out. So if that's the case, how do you build a balloon so big that now when it gets into space, it says, you know what, now let's pull to the center? And it has to do the opposite of what we know it to do if it's going to be a star or a planet. So they just kind of create these ideas that are really just fantastical. They're not even something we can observe. Nobody's ever observed gas being pulled to the center of anything. Yet that's what stars are. That's what planets are, that are gas planets. So again, their stories don't even make sense. We know what happens if we put gas into space. It immediately violently tries to get equalized as far as the pressure goes. So why do they then tell us, oh, well, stars and planets they're big gas balls that pull to the center, which is the opposite of what actually gas does. So there's so many little things like this that now we are seeing that these guys are getting so frustrated with. I mean, let alone the vacuum connected to the atmosphere of Earth. Again, their only answer for that is gravity. But we can take let's say we've got a room as big as the one I'm in, and let's say we evacuate it so that there's only just a box of air at the bottom. Okay, so it's electronically sealed. So now the room's a vacuum. There's just one box of air at the bottom. If we electronically open that, gravity will not hold that air to the ground. Gravity will do nothing. It will just, the gas will disperse into the vacuum. So that's us on a larger scale. We have a huge atmosphere. It's connected to a vacuum. If that was legit, it would be sucked right off. And they say, oh no, gravity holds it. No, it doesn't, or else it would hold the small box of air in the example I just gave. So really they're at a loss right now. They're going to have a hard time convincing. I mean, flat earthers have like a 99% retention rate. Once you see it and you start looking into these things, they're just not going to get you back. It's not as simple as, oh, well, actually we say gravity does this and it matches our observations. You're not going to get these people back. You've lied to them too much when you start telling people they're flying through the universe at 1.2 million miles per hour and we just don't feel it. Or you try and sneak in these little hidden gems, like their favorite one is they say the earth isn't spinning fast. It's only going around one rotation per day. Well, it's like, okay, yeah, I get that. And they're like, well, think of a carousel. If a carousel was going around one rotation per day, you wouldn't even notice it's moving. You're like, yeah, if the carousel is small, but what if the carousel is 25,901 miles, 24,901 miles in circumference? That carousel has an edge velocity of 1,000 miles per hour. Go ahead and stand on the edge of the 1,000 mile per hour turning disc, and you'll see how quickly you'll be flung right off. And we've just seen so many different examples of this. They have to tell people that the force when you spin in a circle pulls you in, which is just ridiculous. We know how a centrifuge works. We know how anything works. If you swing it, the force is to fling out. But because they need centrifugal and centripetal force to be opposites and equal, they have the same formula. They're both the identical formula. They just cancel each other out so that you are being flung out as much as you're being pulled in. So everything on the earth acts as if it's still. Everything, if the mathematics have to be adjusted so that everything comes back to us being still. And, you read all these NASA manuals that say on a flat, non-rotating earth, because that's the best way to train if that's what the reality is. Now they can try and throw in their other mathematics after that. But really, I think that they've basically spelled it out. There's just no way that we are a ball flying through space around a sun that's, incomprehensible, 867,000 miles wide, is retarded, really. I mean, we can look up in the sky and see, oh, there's the sun. And to just let these guys tell us that it's 867,000 miles wide, which is unfathomable, or that we can see so far with these stars, right? I know Dave Weiss always says a good one. Do you know how long a trillion seconds is? What would you guess? Trillion seconds. What would be the time frame on that? It's 31
trillion or 1
years.
trillion.
1 trillion. So 1 trillion seconds is 31,000 years. And so they tell us, just look in a telescope and we can see the closest star, according to them, is 25 trillion miles away. And I don't think anybody really understands what trillion is. It means we've gone way past millions. We've gone way past billions. And to believe that we can just magically see that far is ludicrous. I mean, we could just see if you guys can follow me with this one.
Kind of like the national debt.
Right. Yeah, it's just pretend, right? It's just pretend. What I think is now 33 trillion. Imagine that. So if we take the sun, let's say that the sun was 100 miles from the earth. Well, it would take up the whole day sky, right? You'd look up, you'd see nothing but the sun. So let's move it back to 93 million miles, as they say. And so now we know that the sun is kind of the size of a dime held at outstretched arm, right? That's how big it is, they say now. So if we doubled that again, then, it'd be even half that size, it'd be even smaller sun. And that would only be at 15 light minutes, right? Because it's 8 minutes, they say, the sunlight takes to get here. So by doubling its distance, now we're at 15 minutes. So double it again so that we're at a light hour. Now the sun is tiny, tiny, tiny. Well, now you got to multiply that by 24. Move it 24 times as far, and we're barely at a light day. Would you see the sun? No. And then you have to multiply that by 356 just to get to a light year. Would you still see the sun? Absolutely not. And, from there, that's even 1 light year. Well, still, to get to the closest star, we need to multiply that by 4 more. So you can just see that even there, this is why they have to have the suns be so gigantic, right? Oh, the sun is, I think they even say that our sun is the 3rd smallest in all the Milky Way, which is insane to believe that we would get stuck with that. But the reason for that is because they have to make all the other ones so ginormous that they're, 1 billion times the size of the sun, because otherwise we would never see them. So it's just, their model is so convoluted. And like I said, I am all open for being wrong. People can definitely bring evidence to me. But they just don't have the evidence that, it would take when you get into parallax distance to these stars. When you find out what kind of degree they say they can, pinpoint 89.999914 degrees, you're like, they get into milliarc seconds, which are, you divide in 1 degree into, 60, and then divide each of those into 60. Then you divide it again into 1,000. It just gets insane. Why we ever bought into this, I don't know. They just don't have the evidence anymore to convince me. of anything, really.
Yet it's the perfect size for the moon to cover it on an eclipse.
Right. Isn't that beautiful? Right. And people don't know scaling invariance, that you can take things down. Scaling invariance works across many different sectors, but you would just have to adjust the whole system. Let's say you wanted to take everything to half. Nothing would change in the sky. You would not change your apparent distance or the or apparent size. Is all you would be doing is the sun would be half the distance and everything would be half as small and half as much and and it's just scaling invariance. So you could really adjust these however you want. And the fact that people think that they're proof of something, I mean, how could it be proof? How would we ever know what the mass of Jupiter is? It makes no sense. If people really think about it, you can't possibly know what the mass of Jupiter. Now you can say, well, this equation works out. Well, yeah, you can make an equation that works out, but that's not proof of what the mass of Jupiter is. For all you know, you could be wrong on some of the other things, right? And just
mathematics has been the most abused aspect of science of all, because it's again used in all sorts of inappropriate ways. It can be a useful after the fact tool in order to observe patterns and numerical unfolding of patterns like the Fibonacci sequence and things like that. On the other hand, if you go into real mathematics, like vortex mathematics, it shows you again that mathematics is not an abstract theoretical science. It is in fact a living art form. It shows you how nature unfolds with predictability. It shows you there's just a set amount of digits in the first place that keep repeating, and it makes sense. And the solution, of course, for us all is just to shut our brains off and go take a walk in nature, because when you observe nature, you're going to see all sorts of things levitating and defying all the so-called rules of science. And the real empiricists of old, which would include the monks, the fighting monks up in the hills in China and so forth. They were great empiricists in that they lived in nature, they observed, they mimicked nature, they mimicked animal movements and behavior. And they also learned from that to the point where they could do these things that would defy gravity, so forth. And even people like Victor Schauberger was able, with what he understood, to develop, now this is a misnomer, but he called it an anti-gravity machine, but it did display very well that gravity is non-existent. So could we, you've had a few good debates. I've seen portions of them on your channel with a gentleman where you're going back and forth. I think there's 2 parts, if I'm not mistaken. I forget his name.
McToon, you're probably talking about. MC Toon, I think, is the one maybe you're talking about. But there's a lot. I'll do these kind of conversations. I don't mind talking to the other side. Like, I'm open to them if they are, want to be respectful. I'm okay with it. A lot of people don't want their information heard or whatever, but for me, if there is something that's going to take me back to the globe, I want it to be said. So I certainly am not like, let's censor what they're trying to talk about. No, go ahead and tell me.
We need to get Professor Dave on.
Oh yeah, that'd be fun. That guy, he's not a professor. We call him not a Professor Dave. I guess
I know. He is the biggest joke on the internet, I think.
Probably one of the he's just like lives in his mom's basement and just does videos, and he even says that he pays people to write his scripts. And I mean, he's actually admitted that. I mean, I'm sure you guys have never in your life even dreamt of paying somebody to write your script. Like, I've never even fathomed that thought, and this guy just like goes on there, I pay people to write my scripts. It's like, wow, that's pretty sad. I was gonna ask you if you guys have ever done the rice experiment. That was one of the groundbreaking things for me, and kind of looking at Dr. Emoto's stuff. But the fact
tell us what that is.
Huh?
Oh, I just said, yeah, please tell us what that is.
Well, yeah, the rice experiment. I mean, if you take basically some cooked rice and put it in 3 jars and mark one, hate and one love, and then mark the other one neutral, and put them in the same cupboard.
All right.
Set your phone for 9 in the morning, or wherever you're home every day, and just go to the cupboard and grab the hate one and walk around the corner and chew it out a little bit until it's a piece of garbage and looks like shit, and put it back, and then grab the love one and tell it looks great and it looks edible, and then don't do anything with the neutral one. And it's the biggest eye-opening thing, because in 2 weeks you can clearly see how you're affecting both those jars. That the love rice looks edible. It looks like it's like it was day one. The neutral rice is kind of getting a little bit runny and a little bit brown, a little bit gray, and the hate rice is starting to grow mold. And, you can do that multiple times to where you see that you are, in fact, affecting reality. And the problem with that is science can never say that that exists. So science will not address the rice experiment because they cannot quantitate how much love or hate you're putting into a jar. So they can't even really do a science experiment because they don't believe in love or hate, or they don't even think those are things. So the fact that this country or this world has turned their lives over to science, when science says that something we all know fundamentally exists, doesn't exist, and they can't measure it, but they tell us that science is everything. No, science is not everything. Science is a very small part of life. And yet they've kind of taken it over. I think it's, by design. I think basically they're just another religion who figured out a trick. And that's, well, let's just say that all of our beliefs are true. And you got people like this Aaron Raw, and they'll go around and they'll say, oh yeah, well, I don't have any beliefs because everything I believe has been proven and is true. And then they go around telling you that the stars are, 37 trillion miles away. So again, they don't realize what actually is a belief and what you can't say is proven just because some men tell you that they proved it. There's a lot more that goes into proof than that. So
that is a great experiment I've been aware of for a long time. And if you consider that botanical consciousness is subjected to chemical GMO modification and all that, you don't think that consciousness has something to say about that. And what we're really talking about, rather than just which works fine either way, but we're talking about sending love versus hate. It's a real resonance, and one resonance is something that creates cohesion. It creates integrity of the energetic level of whatever that we're talking about. Whereas the other resonance is going to promote dissolution and chaos and basically
and ultimately it's
it's
probably
gonna
the water
deteriorate
more than the rice, right? It's the water.
the water
Is what we're talking to.
well, the water, of course, we have to get into a little bit of understanding with alchemy and understand
Right.
the water is the third level of the ethers, and it's that sound ether that picks up all the resonance from the above, and it's going to be the conduit for everything. So it's going to be
Right.
more amenable for picking up programs than any other substance.
Yep, I think
which
so
is
too.
why it works so great in our realm for the things it's supposed to do.
Right. And I think, all communication, distances too might be done through the atmosphere, which is itself just connected molecules of water. So really.
So the reason why I brought up the fact that you're, just doing some conversations on your channel is that you go through some very fundamental, debate topics with flat versus round. And we've covered gravity a little bit. So curvature probably is the next big one, I would say. And it seems like that's been disproven. I've kind of seen that with my own eyes, as I already said. But what would be the classic, this refutation of curvature versus maybe one of your debate partners that tries to refute that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that where it's a little bit questionable is the idea of whether you would see a left to right curvature on the earth, because I think that people forget that our eyesight would be the radius of a circle, right? Meaning that all you could ever see in would be technically a circle anyway. So if you got high enough above a flat earth that you would be able to see left to right curvature, but it would be, basically you're looking like at a hula hoop edge on, right? There's curvature to it, but it's not a sphere. And I think that that's, something that's hard for people to grasp. That if you picture being in a plane, but now the windows are opened up, you get this huge view. Well, how could it be flat forever? That doesn't really make sense. It would have to, the way our eyes work is that if you looked at a curb across the street, the curb is going to be flat in front of your eyes, but then it's going to actually fall back. Our eyes are spherical. That's how, cameras work. That's how everything works. So that barrel distortion, they would cause it, exists in our eyes as well. So I think that that's one thing that people sometimes get confused. What I think is the most obvious, though, is the fact that the horizon does rise as we go up, which should never be the case, because if you are living on a sphere, the horizon should stay where it's at. As you start to rise up, it should drop down. It should not be rising with you at all. That doesn't really jive with what I would think would happen on a sphere. So there's, those kind of things. But yeah, as far as proving curvature, it'd be very difficult for them. They're going to say, oh, well, we measure curvature. We have geodetic surveyors who measure curvature. But, one thing I've pointed out many times is if we look off in the distance, do things get smaller in the distance? And the answer is yes, optically. obviously we know that if I'm standing at a 6 foot tall post and off in the distance is a 6 foot tall post, we know that it's still 6 foot, but optically it is dropped, it's smaller off into the horizon, right? Well, when these geodetic surveyors do their surveying, they're taking their transit or theodolite, they're looking through it optically and measuring things based off of what it sees, and it's going to see the same thing. Things in the distance drop, they get smaller, yet they don't account for any of this. So what they're calling curvature is just a hijacked perspective. They've just simply reverse engineered perspective. Things obviously fall away at about 8 inches per mile squared. That might be the fall off of light in an atmosphere. Who knows exactly what it is? But what it's not is the curvature formula. There is no curvature. You're not seeing things go behind curved horizons. And I've been with somebody who promotes these mirror flashes quite a bit because I think it's a great test. When you flash somebody with a mirror, you're actually seeing the reflection of the sun. So you actually have to see the mirror. And we have people at long distances that are flashing mirrors, flashing the sun that's behind the cameraman, and we're able to pick up that reflection when it should be humps of 40 feet, 50 feet, 60 feet of water in between there. And if you go out and do this in your street with your friends, you'll see that as soon as you occult or block that mirror, everything shuts off. You don't see anything because you no longer see the mirror, which means you no longer can see the reflection of the sun. But we're actually seeing that over long, long distances, we're able to pick up mirror flashes, which again, the Glober's only response to that is refraction. Everything so happens to bend at exactly the rate of the globe Earth. So we actually see way too far in the distance, and we see, Canigou, or we see, the sunset behind it, and we can actually see the silhouette of the mountain. And they just tell us, no, it's being lifted up from behind the mountain, right? They've convinced people now when they see the sun that they don't really see the sun, or sorry, the sun's not really where they see it. The sun's behind the horizon, but it's being refracted up. And what you're seeing is actually the sun in the wrong spot. So they just have to give us all this nonsense to basically explain their model, which is, falling apart as we speak.
And one thing that we, sometimes we don't understand is that perception is a belief system. It's something that we've been trained to perceive. Imagine if we were never been in this realm before, had no preconceptions, and you're watching a train out in the distance, which is very tiny. And then by the time it gets to you, it's like this big roaring monster. It would be disconcerting. We wouldn't know how to take it because we haven't been trained, what we're seeing, and how to see it. So again, goes back to my earlier comments and that this is a two-way universe. It's a matter of an interplay of consciousness, and reality is not fixed in stone as we think it. But if you, again, go back to the authentic mechanisms of the realm, then you can understand all of that and actually use it to your advantage. So, and then also realize that things are variable,
Right.
and things change as you change.
And that's our hope, is that people, I think this is kind of one of those easier things that if somebody gets this, then they're really open to everything else, right? Then Flat Earth kind of opens the Pandora's box. It allows them to open their mind to really what I got involved in this originally is, wow, I can actually think and actually say what I think, even if I think it's, it could be wrong. I mean, I think Stonehenge is fake, and I made a video about it and people got upset, but I was able to get out what I believe about it and show pictures of them putting cranes up there in 1920 and 1930. And I said, look at, I got asked this in school, how did they get the blocks up there? And then I find out years later that, well, maybe those cranes that you have pictures of, putting blocks on top. So, things are just easy for me to kind of give up on. Another one, and you might recognize this one, Bear, is that, the way that they've described this universe is that it's expanding. And the way that they have determined that supposedly is because of redshift and blue shift. And they actually call that Doppler. But Doppler, as we know, if an ambulance is driving by us, the reason that Doppler happens is because these sound waves get bunched up in the atmosphere. And so as they're coming towards you, they're squished. And as the ambulance passes you, now it's stretching those waves. And so we get a different pitch, right? Well, they apply that same thing to stars in space, but there is no atmosphere. So there is nothing to bunch up the light, causing it to, get it, basically get a different frequency when it squishes, or to when the light's going away from you to be stretched, because that happens in air. So even there, like I said, their ideas, their theories, and then once you realize how they got there, right? I mean, you've got to, I always read the quote by Hubble, who said, we have to stay away from the absolute horror of a unique position. the central location of the Earth must be avoided at all costs. I mean, that's not science. That's not. He actually says that the observations that we see are that the Earth is at its center. Everything's moving away from it. So to stay away from that, he had to make up something, and he comes up with this idea of a raisin bread, right? Where if a raisin bread is cooking, all the raisins are actually moving away from all the other raisins, and therefore they would all think that they're the center of the universe because all the raisins would be moving away. That's basic. And then did they actually research and say, let's go look? No. They discount the one that has the observations that match it, that we are the center. They throw that away because they say we have to stay away from the absolute horror of a unique position. They don't want that at all. They say it's intolerable, is what they say in that quote. And so then on the other hand, you've got this raisin bread idea. Was that experimentally confirmed? No, it was simply the mechanism that they went to, the philosophy that they decided on, because they had a choice. Either we're the center or we're not. Well, of course, they're going to go with not. That they don't want any God to be real, any creation, any kind of intelligent being beyond, Neil deGrasse is the smartest guy ever to exist. So that's what they want. That's what their intention was. So it's crazy to see some of these quotes. George Ellis says that, he says, I can construct a spherically symmetrical universe with the Earth at its center, and you can't disprove it based on observations, which is insane to think, because if you asked a science person, they would say, oh, all observations tell us that we're heliocentric, and well, he just said that we can construct one and you can't disprove it on observations. And he says, what I want to bring out in the open is that a lot of cosmology is based on philosophical grounds. And he said, and a lot of cosmology tries to hide that. It's one of the biggest quotes that people can hear, because you just got told by a mainstream cosmologist, physicist, that a lot of cosmology tries to hide something. Well, cosmology is a science. Why is science trying to hide things from? I mean, it doesn't even make sense. It doesn't register with most people. But what they're trying to hide is that they've based their entire world off a worldview. And that worldview does not include a creator, and does not include a God, and does not include any of that. It doesn't include supernatural. It just includes basically this mechanistic Copernican, isotropic, heterogeneous, the whole thing is just whatever they could scrape by, whatever they could keep and scrape by, which is where we're at now. And this is why they call it, they even say, you can look this up, a crisis in cosmology. We are currently in a crisis in cosmology, because they have built a structure, if you ask, Tesla, what Tesla would say, entirely built on mathematics with no connection to reality. And that's where we're at now with dark matter and dark energy, and it's garbage.
I will say that we see the world imploding in chaos and going on in the cities, and going on with governments, and going on with wars, and Israel right now, and all throughout Africa, all the wars that we don't even hear about in the media because they want us focus on the one, right? And what's going on in Mexico. All of the nonsense is related directly to this, because of the prime directive of creating this mythos around an entropic universe that is dying, that is based on scarcity, that is based on this materialistic notion that we've got one shot. It's super cynical and depressing, and there's a lack of spiritual ethos at all, because of this specific plan that they've initiated. So those who say, well, what's the point? Why bother doing it? That's the point. The point is to have their control system set and to create the chaos, order out of chaos, specifically from this point of view. And that's why it's so important to have these conversations for those who are just kind of waking up into these concepts, because it can initiate that first gnosis into, wow, maybe all that scientism nonsense is not correct, and that we actually live in an abundant closed system that is forever looping based on cycles, and we have things like reincarnation and thought controlled universe and all this stuff that the ancients knew, the Hermetics knew, and all that, which opens up to the divine and to our ability to co-create and to create beauty on earth.
Which brings us to the most fundamental question that disbelievers, or whatever we want to call it, skeptics would have with all of this, is that why would anybody mislead us? And if you can answer that question, then everything starts unraveling. At the top of the hierarchy, you got whoever, the Royal Society, all the folks, different theories as far as who they are behind the shadows. But of course, their job is to divorce us from nature and our true personal nature in order to control us more. Then you go down the rungs of the hierarchy. You have your Faucis and people that are motivated by money. Then you have the white coats and the black coats, the black robes, and people that are doing the wet work for the hierarchy because they, probably have drunk the Kool-Aid. Or say if you went through medical school and which is MK Ultra mind control, learning through trauma, you have a lot at stake in your ego as far as maintaining that everything you endured was for a purpose. So you got to hold that line for that reason, or you're going to get sanctioned if you don't. So it goes back to the original thing of, okay, we're just trying to convince folks that the banking industry wasn't on the up and up. And the question was the same. Well, why would they do that? Why would they deliberately cheat us and, destroy a country? So any thoughts on any of that?
No, I think it's just obvious that, when people ask me why the lie, of course, we're not the ones doing it, so it'd be hard to get exact motive. But I do think, it's important to talk about one of those things being that Hollywood, let's say Hollywood real quick, Hollywood in their yearly economy is about it's about 50 billion, and that's worldwide.
Wow.
Right? That includes all Netflix and all of blockbuster movies and your home box office and your DVD players and your Blu-ray and everything. So it's like $50 billion a year. And then in music, it's about 29 billion, and that includes Spotify and all these different Pandora and you name it, Sirius Radio, everything music, CDs, record sales, uploads, everything is like 29 billion. And then video games is like 120 billion, which is all console sales, all the little apps on your phone, all that stuff. So combined, you're talking about like 170, 209 billion. The space agency, the space economy is 540 billion a year. So people don't realize that we're talking about something that's twice as valuable as all of movies, all of music, all of video games, which is that's a huge source of many businesses' money. So the space agencies are now just charging people ridiculous money for stupid. Like the other day I was talking about, how could a launch of a satellite cost, $600 million? Like, go find a house that's $1 million and look at that house and start to think, now 600 of these went into, no, it's just not possible. It's got to be done. And this is why you got Bezos who goes to space, right? And you've got Elon Musk who goes to space, and you've got Richard Branson. So they're definitely trying to sell people on this idea that space is expensive and it's only for the rich. And they, even have commercials where they tell you, oh, you can go up there, it's only $450,000. Like, we don't have commercials for $450,000 anything, because it's stupidity. Why would you ever put that on TV? Clearly, people watching TV don't have that kind of money. That's why you don't advertise like that. But yet they advertise for these stupid trips to space. And it's just to kind of reconfirm to you that space exists. People are going to go there. They're going to see the curvature of the Earth, and you can go too if you have $450,000, right? But none of these people have ever gone. They've, Richard Branson has said he's had this money for 20 years. Go back and look at Google search. You can see him saying he's going to put hotels in space in 2010, 2012, Elon Musk is going to send people around the moon in 2014. We've got that Dear Moon guy that was supposed to go with all his crew as announced. They just announce these things and never follow through. There's some funny ones, like Axe deodorant spray did a send somebody to space camp thing where they had all these entrants and all these people tried out and they got to go to space camp, and then they selected like a final 5 or 6 that got to go to space. Well, they never went to space. And I reached out to the reporter, and they're like, yeah, I think they just paid him off. They just couldn't get to space. So, it's just, and people forget all about these things. They just gloss right over it. I've showed before where pretty much if you go to Kickstarter, every single campaign that's anything to do with space is a complete and total scam. It's always like, we'll put this satellite up there and we'll take pictures and zoom it down to your iPhone. And then everybody signs up and puts all this money into it. And then the person just disappears. And people are like, oh, well, I guess we're not going to get our money back. But it's like with space, people just are allowed, they give this kind of pass to the world where it's like, look at, in 1970, Pan Am was booking flights to the moon. This is ridiculous. Like, how long are we going to keep kicking this can down the road to where it's always, and the presidents do it on purpose. I did a video documentary called NASA Going Nowhere Since 1958. And it was all about how each president just kicks the can to the next one. And it's back and forth, So if Obama says we're going to go to Mars because, we're tired of going back to the moon, Then he goes through that whole process. And then next you have Trump who comes and says, no, we're going to go to the moon. And then everything goes in that direction. And then here comes Biden, no, we're going to Mars. So it's like this purposeful back and forth that would never happen in reality, just not the way you would ever do anything. You would never build things the way they do or destroy things like they do. You've got, one of the astronauts saying that he would go to the moon in a nanosecond, but we destroyed the technology that got us to the moon. But again, we may have destroyed the technology of Game Boy too, but somebody could build a Game Boy at this point pretty easily because we built it in the past. So they act like, oh no, we just we destroyed the technology. There's no way we can get back to the moon. So again, what are they going to do coming up? That's going to be the tough thing as far as, are they going to keep faking this stuff?
Well, I think it's obvious they're waiting and kicking the can down the line until the metaverse is so integrated into society that you think you're actually, it's kind of like an Orson Scott Card science fiction Ender's Game scenario where you think you're going in space, but you're really like in a meta type virtual reality.
There's already some people like that, right? Like Corey Good and a couple other people that say that they go to Mars. I mean, they're clearly just being like manipulated mentally, but they think it. And again, if you give somebody, I've seen hypnotism, it works. You could hypnotize somebody and have them wake up and be on a set where they would think they're on Mars, and then have them go back to sleep. And when they wake up again, they would think they went there. So it's probably.
And we're also seeing that hypnotism on a mass scale right now before our eyes. So that kind of budget, especially in the past, begs the question, why couldn't they do a better job with some of the graphics? You think with that kind of resource, they could go hire Skywalker Ranch or something and get some good graphics out, to a stellar job on the, on the moon landing or whatever. I had the interesting experience for a long time. I was personal physician for one of the astronauts in the family. And their family. And I won't mention the name. I will say, though, that it was very interesting, the things that came up, because the way I work, I treat the physical body, but we also have to pay attention to what's going on other planes of their being, what we would, call their emotional and etheric bodies and things. And it's very revealing, and it's things that are easy to verify, what's coming up, and then the results you get, with people getting better or not. But so that was an interesting experience. And, when I started with this family, I didn't know everything I knew now, but still, based on that experience, a lot of questions came up as far as what the hell is going on here. Because there's a very troubled family.
NASA also, portrayed this every home American, or it's all American, good old boy. They wanted to portray this astronaut mythology that these guys were like, the guy next door, and this is why they picked Gus Grissom first, and then Armstrong and these guys. But really, when you look into it and start to see the problems that they were having within. These guys have always been trying to scream something. It looks like Gus Grissom was killed for basically hanging that lemon on the lemon and saying, hey, we can't even communicate between these buildings. What are we going to do here? And then I've done an interview with Gary Sears. I can't remember. Is Gary Sears? Anyway, he was a main investigator into that whole Thomas Ronald Barron case, where a guy worked for North American. He did like a 500-page report on the inadequacies of NASA and showed up at court one day, and then they couldn't find the paper, even though he'd already submitted. Oh, we got to look for it, whatever. Well, then that week he died, got hit by a train. Come to find out, the train that he was hit by is owned by NASA, came out of a NASA switchyard. It's like all these things are just pretty much signs that, I think that a lot more of the world answers to NASA than we think. I think that they, if you look at the history when they came into being, which was, 1958, right after Project High Jump and Operation Fishbowl, where they were launching these nukes, supposedly, if you believe in those, up at the sky. And, it seems like they realized something then. They immediately go with the Antarctic Treaty, which says that we can't go below the 60-degree line. We have to get all these permits that end up costing millions of dollars, even if we wanted to try. And some of us starting to think that maybe you don't even need to do that. Some of us are going to put together possibly a crew to go down there just to at least test that. Because we've all been for 9 years been saying, oh, you can't go down there, you can't go down there. But we're like, nobody's really just, let's go. It'd be great footage if they do turn us around and say you're not going past.
I've seen footage of ships turned around.
Yeah, seen a couple too. But as far as like, live streaming it or one of us doing it. I don't know, just a thought that we want to see if we actually get turned around. And then from there, because I think there's enough investigators and explorers in this world, in this community, that if they saw something like that, maybe it would trigger that old exploratory kind of feeling that we all had inside, because they
Captain Cook circumnavigated that and kept going around and around.
Right, he went like 60,000 miles, which should have been like 11 to go around Antarctica. But
I mean, the fun exploration is also through consciousness and just thinking about, okay, where does this realm end? How does the realm work? The ice wall, going through that sort of idea, right? The ice wall is what keeps the liquid in, keeps the oceans in. What's beyond that? We talk about extraterrestrial entities. Well, terrestrial meaning being from here. So I do believe that there are older or different civilizations that are potentially either in a realm under us, if that's some sort of like possibility that it's multi planes,
right,
or it's past the seawall and there's whole other continents and whole other places. And that's another reason, once again, for the big lie, is because they want to keep us in scarcity, want to keep us in this mindset, because they protract out through, especially now with all their advanced AI, algorithmic computers, exactly they have every square inch of the current realm that we think is all there is of the globe mapped out. And they know it's going to, with population and people getting more tapped in and buying more private property, that's their Malthusian fear, right? Of that us mouth breathers, us, are going to have freedom and have our own land, and that's something they can't have. So they want to keep us in this little prison. And meanwhile, for all we know, there's massive continents, Lemuria, Atlantis is maybe on the other side. Who knows what, right? And that there's all these paradise over there that from like the Bible and stuff. So I think that's another way to look at exploration, not necessarily getting in a boat, which would be amazing. And I know it's actually quite dangerous by the seawall, the oceans and stuff you have to really know what you're doing. But yeah, to be able to explore just through thinking and consciousness, really what the hyper realities can be. And then also with new technologies, with advanced drone technologies and ability to go up to the firmament and hit the shell or whatever. Like we've seen people put up high atmosphere balloons and see no curvature. So yeah, we are at the dawn of the new age of exploration is my point here.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think that, we've got enough people out there that are interested in this, that somebody maybe with some money or something will come along, because we always get these globers that want to tell you, well, where's your model? How does everything work? And it's like, that's ridiculous. We've had, 8 years and a bunch of guys sitting behind their computers. You had 400 years, every bit of money from monarchies and from kings and queens and governments to map every coastline. And so it's not really a fair fight. And then, I always bring up too, because they always want to basically have you replace what they believe currently. And that's not our job either. By pointing out the lies, right? We used an example of if I'm rifling through my parents' drawers and I find an adoption certificate that has my name on it and my date of birth and both my parents sign it, and I start to kind of realize, oh shoot, I've been adopted. If I brought that to people and said, hey, look, I've got evidence that I've been adopted. Imagine them saying, well, who's your real family? And I'd say, well, I don't know. I just found this. And they said, well, we're not even listening to that evidence until you tell us who your real family is. I said, well, okay, regardless, I'm showing you that I've been lied to. And they're no, not until you tell us that's what globers are like. Until we tell them how the sun and moon stay up in the sky, they won't even venture a thought that their current belief could be wrong. And
that's not logical fallacies they love, circular reasoning, begging the question, they're the kings of logical fallacies.
So much. How do you know the gravity of Jupiter? And they say, oh, because, we can use Newton's law to do the mathematics thing. No, but that's not knowing the gravity of Jupiter. Just because you can plug in numbers until it works. They just seem to not get that. They really think that if you're told something is a certain size, like Jupiter is this big, that there's some sort of proof of that. And I don't know what it would be. They don't understand angular size allows that to be many different sizes and still appear the same in the sky to you. It could just be very closer to you and much larger or very far away from you and so on and so forth. So they are like,
and what if those bodies aren't even physical? What if they're plasma fields or some such thing?
Exactly. I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, nobody goes there. Nobody's verifying. And again, the one place that you'll never go Why would they tell you the truth about that? In fact, that'd be stupid. Of everything that they've lied to us about, and then they were telling you the truth about a place you can't go to and verify, that doesn't even jive. It doesn't even make sense with what we know liars do. Liars are going to take every opportunity to make up some story that benefits them and the universe story and the planets. And like you said, Mike, that we're this, fragile thing that can come and go, and climate change, because we, even though carbon is like fantastic and everything, no, it's bad in this case, because I mean, it's just such a,
even though all the elites have their oceanside estates, right?
Yeah, and we got the water hasn't gone up a lick in places, and yet, yeah, it's just, and they've convinced the world, because if you ask somebody who's a mainstreamer, they'll yell at you when you say climate change. You're a climate denier. You're a science denier. Same thing they did with throughout COVID, right? Everybody we were all science deniers, and we didn't trust the science, and we were vindicated for that. If you go back and look at everything that happened, and yet they'll never say, "Oh, sorry, you guys were right." I mean, it's just going to be the same thing next time. It gets kind of frustrating, but at the same time, I've seen a bunch of people that are very happy. We just had the Flatoberfest this past weekend in Vegas, and to have 400 or 500 people together, like-minded people, listening to presentations. We had Amanda Vollmer there, and Greg Reese spoke, and Mark Devlin, and myself, and Mark Sargent, and Austin Whitsitt, lots of people, Dave Murphy, just some great presentations.
I didn't know Greg Reese was on that end of the spectrum.
Yeah, Greg Reese presented, and he's coming along with that thought too. He did a great video for kind of the first time we saw Flat Earth show up on InfoWars, was about maybe a year and a half ago, where he did a nice piece on that. So he's coming along. It's hard for people to see this and not. Amanda Vollmer made a great presentation where she said that she was a little bit nervous about going to that event, but now that she's been there, she's like, okay, it's just like everything else. It's these people are just as awake as everything else, and she's actually regrets not doing it sooner. So I think more and more people are realizing that the community is not a bunch of crazy people that are trying to what do they say? Oh, it's a psyop to discredit the truth movement or anything like that. No, it's just another piece of the puzzle. And if it's not particular to you, you don't like it, then just leave it. But there's nobody out there trying to psyop the truth movement. There's nobody trying to make the truth movement look insane. It's simply some people who have found huge discrepancies in the what we were taught. And really, if you just think about that alone, we were taught where we live at such an age that is your basic building blocks of your entire psyche is that first 7 years, right? And that's when they put that globe in front of you. They put it in every commercial and every cartoon, and students are carrying it around, and it just basically, without any rhyme or reason or thought to it, it becomes what you recognize as the place you live. And the more you hear about it, the more we're flying 2.1 million miles per hour. And how is it that planes don't go faster when they fly to the east? I'm sorry, to fly to the west, right? Because the ground should be coming towards you. But in fact, it's actually the other way around. If you fly a plane from California to New York, that is actually quicker, which makes no sense, except for if you know about jet streams, and that's how they fly, basically get up in those. So there's just, things we were told as kids, right? That the water goes down opposite directions in the north and south, in the toilets and sink bowls, and everybody believes this. There's even people that sit at the equator with like bowls that are specially designed to trick you. They'll pour water, it'll go down one direction, they'll step over here, and then you tip them. And really, it all comes down to how they poured it and which bowl they use. So these little tricks just tell me that we've got issues. I mean, we saw there was this online planetarium. It was called Neve.planetarium. I use it all the time to kind of look at where the stars would be and everything. And then one day I was playing with the time period, and I noticed you could go back as far as you wanted. So I would rewind it like 5,000 years, and I would say, well, why is Polaris still the North Star? I said, that's kind of weird, because it should change constantly, meaning throughout that entire time, it's got to be wrong if it didn't change. So I asked the guy, and he says, oh, I got to get a different code for it. And then like 3 days later, he took his site down. Then you go there and it goes to Stellarium, and Stellarium has a model where it does actually move. And it's just weird little things like that where we find these, I don't know if you guys heard about, obviously, the Georgia Guidestones being destroyed, right? When really it was just like one little thing got knocked and they just took out the whole thing, or the whole thing's gone. But there was a hole drilled in the top of the Guidestones that pointed right at the North Star. And it had already been up, I think, what did they say? That was built in 1980. So we're talking about already 45 years. Well, every 70 years, the stars are supposed to move by a half degree. So it was getting to the point where you would see that probably Polaris hasn't moved. And so sure enough, what do you know? Now they're bombed by who knows why. Nobody ever got caught. Nobody ever, of course, these are the kind of stories, are just fabrications, but those are down now so that you don't realize that the North Star seems to not move. And you can find Plato and you can find Hercules and some of these other guys saying in their old writings that, there's one star that doth not move, and it doesn't even make sense time-wise. There wouldn't have been a star there at the time that they wrote. Yet we're told now that there's some crazy precession, and it's just all
the precession of the equinoxes, they say, is due to the wobble.
Right.
And so it's this magical, perfect wobble that keeps precession exactly like a clock for thousands and thousands of years. That's a pretty amazing
pretty amazing wobble. Like, it's like a top. You're like, yeah, but a top, the wobble is not consistent at all. It's like on its way down. It's like that's when it wobbles. But yeah, so there's just all these things that have reconfirmed for me that we are barking up the right tree. It is the right questions to ask. It is right to ruffle these guys' feathers. If they don't like it, it's too bad. I mean, I found out too many things. I found out that story about these 10 PhD scientists who actually took T-Rex bones, supposedly T-Rex bones, and mailed them to a lab, but didn't tell the lab that they were T-Rex bones just to find out what they did. And they all came back at like 10 to 18,000 years. And so these guys were doing a big presentation. Well, sure enough, their presentation got pulled. They were all banned, told they couldn't send anything to these labs anymore. And the lab said, no, because you have to tell us that they're dinosaur bones. And it's like, oh, fantastic. So now it's not, our dating machines are fine as long as we tell it that it's, and then dinosaur bones magically would always come back at 65 million years or older, right? So these things are all just programmed by men. They're just lies. They're just deceptions. Bones would never last 67 million years old. Anyway, it's just, it's a fabrication of a story. The idea of these geological columns, and you've got trees that are going in these layers, right? You have these layers of earth that they date as thousands of hundreds of thousands of years, but there's like a tree they found that goes up the entire thing, which just completely debunks the whole thing. So we've just been lied about on a massive level. And, you guys doing the work you're doing, everything's just helping and getting people to have better lives. One of the biggest things for me was being afraid to kind of start something, because when I heard all this stuff, it was like overwhelming, right? Do this, change your water, change this, change your walk habit, change what you eat, don't eat. Oh man, it's just so much. But as I started to eliminate one thing at a time, and it really started with like Dave Weiss bought me one of these water distillers, and it was a Christmas present, and we started using it. And right away, you just notice a change. So all of a sudden it was, okay, now we're drinking healthy water, right? And then from there, I'm adding a lemon to it. Now I'm adding cayenne pepper. Now I'm adding shilajit. Before you know it, you're just starting to clean up on all cylinders. And that's the best feeling. And again, what you're doing is what you've researched and what feels right to you. And there's no way that even that positive mood doesn't help you as well. It's part of the entire elixir. And there's still just people, throwing down Tylenol and Advil and just all these pharmaceutical drugs, which are meant to make you just patients for life for, the pharmaceutical companies. So really, it's been a team effort from everybody, learning about, COVID, learning about germ theory versus terrain theory, getting that kind of information from, Amanda and Dr. Cowan, all these guys. They've just all been instrumental in really making things easier. None of us fell for COVID. That's the great thing about being a flat earther. Nobody who was a flat earther fell for that. We all just kind of laughed it off, and we have to change our our streams and kind of our focus to that. Yeah. But there wasn't, and we saved lives. You guys save lives, whether anybody admits it or not. I know that for sure, that I know that a lot of us had important parts in saving people's lives. And that's not very often you get to say that you've done that. So congrats to you guys.
On the flip side, Cowan, with his knowledge, has realized the globe model is pretty nonsense, and is definitely asking.
And Kaufman and
well, Kaufman is kind of outed now, but sorry, Cowan, if I'm outing you, but I don't think he cares at this point. He's the last to care about what people think about him.
Right. That's one of the, you got to have that thick skin to do what we're doing anyway. So it's pretty
comes
sure.
back to medicine every time, which also includes just self-knowledge as far as how to take care of your own body. Because if we do what they tell us, of course, there's going to be impediments to the normal Kundalini flow upward. You're never going to break through the crown there to, get the more extensive bandwidths of knowledge. And that's the bottom line. It's just designed to keep us in our lower centers and,
Fluoride's been a killer off.
Convenient herd animals.
You think fluoride's been a big one? I mean, that one to me,
Oh, huge.
if you had to pick out one thing that was, kind of causing the state of the world today, it does seem like we've kind of, go read a letter
if
written
you
by somebody in
consider
1900.
that,
They were smart.
yeah,
Yeah.
if you consider for decades they've taken it upon themselves to make sure that just about every municipal water supply has fluoride in it, and then after the fact we realize, oh, it calcifies the pineal.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think that's a coinkydink.
No, and it's basically radioactive waste. I mean, it's basically what it is, that they had to find somewhere to put it, and they're like, well, just put it in your drinking water. It's great for you.
And unfortunately, a lot of folks just don't know how to discern between naturally occurring trace element fluoride in the soil versus industrial waste product fluoride, two different animals.
Right. One is going to should be present, and the other one has no reason to be. But yeah, it's just when you look at the world, you can just tell that they've done a number with all this processed food. And, finding out the other day, I'm like finding out Skittles is, terrible. I mean, I've known that candy's bad, but now they actually are pointing to a specific ingredient in it and saying that it's harmful. And it's like, think of like every one of us has eaten bags and bags of Skittles. It's ridiculous. I mean, they basically, every child that there is at Halloween will eat 10 of those bags. So, I mean, it's just sad to see that easily they can just.
In the 50s, when I was out trick-or-treating, I was given candy with good old-fashioned sugar, which has its downside, but still a hell of a lot better than aspartame. And I was amazed, even the sugar products like a Snickers bar, they also have aspartame in it, which is a common nerve, toxin that they used in the World Wars as a weapon.
Yeah.
Inverted corn syrup. You've got little boys, running around with bitch tits and, just no future masculinity in store for them. It's sad,
Oh, it's sad.
But anyway, we'll leave it on a high note here. Just your work is phenomenal too. And just, thank you for having the courage and getting out and braving new territory, because you have to take all the arrows that come with it. Any final thoughts that you have, or please tell us also how people can reach you and your work and any upcoming events you might have.
Can I say one thing too about Jaren? Is he's also very active in the crypto decentralized space. He's hosted myself and Jason Crow talking about Cordal to his community. So thanks again, because that's just another example of applying knowledge to solutions and bringing forth remedy for folks who might be trapped in some sort of, financial situation, because I know of a lot of people who have found financial freedom through not only cryptocurrency, but understanding, other sort of things that you help people with. So thanks again for doing that as well.
Yeah, no problem. I'd love to help people. I think it's great. And yeah, we have a Patreon group for crypto, which is, like $10 a month, but you get a, chat on Telegram. And then also we do classes every other week. And really, it's just more of a place where you can always drop something by if you say, I want to go do this. And then we kind of make sure that you're not about to get robbed. So it's kind of a helpful group. Everybody helps each other. So we do have that available. And we have those classes every other Friday night. So you can check that out. We do a summit every few months. We've got one coming up December 8th and 9th. That will be Mount Meru 2. So look forward to that. And I believe it is flatearthsummits.com, or I'm sorry, trueearthsummits.com, which will be up soon. So you'll be able to check that out. We'd love to see you come by. We make it nice and cheap. We pay our speakers, and we hope that really what we're doing is just kind of thanking them at the same time, and then providing a summary of information for the viewer for a inexpensive price. So we've been doing those. And then besides that, you can find me at jeranism.com. That's my YouTube channel, Rockfin. Everything. I'm kind of all over the place. And yeah, it's been certainly fun. I'm trying a couple new things. Like you said, a debate show. I just got tired of other debates as far as them being too long or getting stuck on a certain item. And I get frustrated at that. Where I think at this point, especially when we're talking globe Earth versus flat Earth, I think we were at a place now where I want people to make claims and back them up. So if you believe something, then come on the show and say, here's my claim and here's my evidence to back it up. And I feel like we can get somewhere if we do that. But we're already noticing that getting a lot less of volunteers from the globe side. Imagine that when I'm asking for claims backed up by evidence, because it's not as easy as just laugh at flat earthers and call them flurfs. you actually have to, back your model and stand behind it with evidence, which is turning out to be more difficult than I think that they know. So appreciate you guys doing the work you're doing, and I'll still be here, not going anywhere. And we will, Jeranism.com is where you can find all my links, the link page, the shop, everything. So appreciate you guys having me on. I would love to be on anytime.
Hey, great connecting, and thank you again, Jeran.
You guys are awesome.
Very much appreciate you, and so happy we were able to connect and have you on the show. Everyone, please go support Jaren and all of the stuff he's doing. His links are in the show notes below, and go subscribe to his channel, his Rockfin channel as well, which is probably where most of your stuff is. Would you say, Jaren?
Yeah,
Rockfin?
that's for sure. You get everything there. So that's,
Okay.
Great. And then you get everybody else there. It's $15 a month, but you get everybody there. Owen Benjamin, you've got, Karen B and Glowbusters and Austin Whitsitt. There's so many channels over there. Eddie Bravo does a show over there, and Sam Tripoli. So it's really kind of one of the best deals. For $15, you get all that. There's no ads on the site, no ads during the videos or anything like that. And so far they've let us talk about, the vaccine and everything else that is frowned upon otherwise. So for now, I don't like to get my eggs in too many, don't want to get it too attached to it, because I know how things can change. But for now, it's a great platform, and I'm supporting it as long as they're supporting us.
Well, Big Bear, Owen stress tested it, and he's back. So
you got to be the first one removed and then reinstated. So, but again, that was a huge sign for me, because I think as soon as that happened, I said, oh man, here we go. It's just another one of these. And actually Owen did some things that I thought would have cemented him as being never invited back. And so for them just to bring him back was like, okay, this is awesome. This is them showing they're able to work with us and, get the right idea. And they were just mistaken about a title of a video they took the wrong way. And I think that's, one of maybe 2 or 3 videos that they've ever removed. And they're always right there to say why. And again, if we can talk about these things, that's great.
Having the ability to talk to each other reasonably and in honor is very important. And that's one thing that's cool about, working with someone like Rockfin or with like HowTube, going back to HowTube, is there's actually individual to individual connection, where you kind of lose that sometimes in the decentralized systems, like, on like Odyssey, but that's on the flip side, immutable, fully public, transparent, and is powerful in its own right. So they're both very valuable. And so, definitely check out HowTube, Jaren, for your summits, because they do allow for that private embed functionality that really only Vimeo, I know, kind of has down pat, and the HowTube actually does it just like that. So, go support them, howtube.com/crowdfund. Mike is really cool. He's been very supportive of us. And go support Jaren, and love you guys. Next week we are back at 10 a.m. on Thursday with, I think we have Stellium 7 coming on, which if you're familiar with his channel, we talk about the mythos of dinosaurs, but he has he's looking at geology in a whole new way, showing that there's good evidence of ancient giants and all sorts of creatures and stuff that dispels the narrative around Darwinian evolution and all that. So can't wait for that one. Thank you guys. Love you so much. Remember to give this a thumbs up. Go support Jaren, support this show with a like and a subscribe. We'll see you next time. Remember to get outside, get your feet in the dirt, go plant something, start a garden, or get your greenhouse going. I guess if you're in the Northern Hemisphere and the Southern Hemisphere, get your garden going. We love you, and have a beautiful rest of your week. Cheers.
Peace.